Okay, I thought I'd do a Cameron's Corner. I know I'm doing this on Marco Polo, so my apologies to Justin because I'm driving and I thought of doing this just now, and I don't know how to get onto YouTube and record it for Cam's Corner, so I got to do it through Marco Polo this time, and then we'll put it onto Cam's Corner. But I wanted to follow up at the last fireside on the atonement. One of the questions I was asked about is, what do you do with the language in the scriptures about redemption and ransom and paying a price and so on? And I tried to answer that question there in real time, and I want to do a little bit more on that right now. So because there are scriptures that say, even Jesus says he came to give his life a ransom for many. And so I'm going to try to quickly give some more thoughts on that in addition to what I said at the atonement fireside. So the reason why this came up is because in the fireside I was pointing out how the model of our atonement, the model for atonement that we use most often to interpret the atonement is like a commercial model or a courtroom model. And that to understand the temple, you should probably use a transfiguration model instead of the commercial or courtroom model. And then the question was, well, why do we have all the courtroom and commercial language in the scriptures, right? So this is I gave a response there, and I'm going to give my more full response here. And I can't remember the sister that asked it. So if Josh or Nicole Earl watch this at any point, you can share this with her, and maybe it'll be a better answer for her. Because I noticed afterwards she came up to ask me some more questions, and I could tell that what I was saying wasn't satisfying her. And so it made me think, oh, I wonder if others aren't satisfied either. So I'm going to try again, okay? So as I said in the fireside, the Exodus from Egypt is the best way, I think, to start on this question. And what you have in the Exodus is that the Israelites are in bondage to another being, not to God. They're in bondage, let's say, to the fall or to the devil, something like that. That's what their bondage, symbolically speaking, represents. And the Passover redeems them and or buys them, ransoms them out of that bondage, out of that slavery. And in fact, the firstborn son in like ancient Israelite families was called the Redeemer. And the reason why is, and that's actually, he was given an extra portion, a double portion, they would say, of the father's inheritance, so that he could use that to buy back like family members who had sold themselves into slavery to pay off a debt or otherwise. And so that's one reason why brothers are fighting in the Old Testament, is because the firstborn inheritance meant they got more money and they got more power. And that's why you're also careful about who you would give it to, is because do you want to give it to the brother that's going to waste it, on riotous living or something like a King Noah? Which, by the way, a king is supposed to be basically the redeemer, the firstborn, the brother that looks after everybody else. That should be what he is, but not just for his family, but for all of society. And so that's, the critique of kings in the Old Testament or the New Testament or even in the Book of Mormon, is that they aren't using the extra inheritance, the extra wealth and power they've been given to bless others, and using it on themselves, right? So that is, so Jehovah in this context, in this typology, is the Redeemer. He's the older brother, you could say. He's the firstborn who has extra, a double portion given to him, so that he can use to buy us out of bondage or slavery. And And then why does this work? And that everybody follows this, I think, tracks it, and is like, okay, yeah, cool, right? But the deeper question is, why does it work? Like, why does God even have to buy them out in the first place? Why does he really have to pay off the devil, let's say, or something like that? And that's why I'm going to shift the perspective from the devil to the fall, okay? What he has to buy us out of is the fall. And the reason I'm making that emphasis, or emphasizing that, is because the fall is the natural consequence of prior actions, right? So what you need to be redeemed from is cosmic justice. The cosmic justice that I tried to lay out in the waters in the creation story. Those waters are, as I said, are potential. They're also justice, you could say, because whatever you send forth into the waters comes back to you. Whatever you speak into it is reflected back to you. It's Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's like an ancient way of symbolizing that law. But I love it better than the Newton thing. Well, Newton I like too, because physics is a material thing. Everything in physics because there's material. And that's what I want everyone to understand, is that when you put this concept in, when you take it from like an abstract idea and then you tie it to like material, like this is just how matter in the universe works. That's what I'm trying to say when I say the water. I'm not saying the primal element is water. I'm saying that the ancients are using water to represent the primal element. And they're using water because it has some aspects to the symbolism that describe the primal element really well. And what I'm saying is the primal element just reflects back to you what you give it. That's like, so like cosmic justice isn't an abstract idea. It's actually just the way matter works, right? And that's kind of what Newton is saying. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, so if that's true, and that applies to everyone, even God, then you can see the problem here for us, but not so much for God, because that's why God is the creator, is because he, through his actions, through his goodness, and this is a difference, it's not just because he's powerful, it's because he's so good that the matter of the universe just reflects back to him naturally what he does. Okay, so that is true of what Jesus did when he came to earth. Whatever he did, matter, nature, will respond to him in a way that it won't respond to us. And if he is going to descend below all things when he didn't have to, when it wasn't required of him, if he's going to do it just because of love, just because he cares about us and wants to understand us, wants to know us, wants to be able to anoint us, let's say, with a little bit of his light of Christ, wants to transfigure us just a little bit with the glory that's in his bosom, if he wants to go through all that trouble, then he still deserves to do, and let me say it this way, that's the most he could do at the time because of how far you and I have fallen. So the most he could do is just do a little bit of transfiguration. But what he needs to do is then go back up to heaven, like trailblaze the path back to heaven, which will enable him. All right, hold on, I'm here to pick up a kid, so I'm gonna have to stop for a second and pick up on that thought, okay? And then it'll be a little bit, because once my kid gets in the car, he's not gonna want to listen to me do a Marco Polo about cosmic justice. So I'll be back in a few minutes.